Welcome back with a new issue of our PBL Talks. As you know, we interview and we discuss with professors from several foreign countries about the COVID-19 reaction from a tax standpoint. Today, we discuss about China, and we host Professor Zhang from the East China University of Political Science and Law, based in Shanghai. Professor Zhang, would you please provide us with a quick picture on the main Chinese tax measures that have been enacted in order to tackle the COVID-19 emergency?
Thank you, Luca. Thank you, Pietro, and thank you for your invitation, because this is a really interesting thing, because people from different jurisdictions to discuss the COVID-19 related tax issues. For China, as you may have found from the OECD, the database, I noticed that the OECD has a database to introduce the different countries the measures, tax measures have taken by different countries. Okay, and yes, there are some information about Chinese tax measures. Okay, so as you can see there, the Chinese tax authorities respond very quickly to the effect of the pandemic by announcing a tax and other financial relief to fight against this COVID-19 pandemic and to support the business and individuals. So I think the first guideline released by the Chinese State Administration of Taxation was in late January, which was a quite early stage of the pandemic. So far that altogether there are more than 10 guidelines have been released by the SAT. The SAT is the short form of State Administration of Taxation in China, by SAT together with the Ministry of Finance. Okay, so these measures can be categorized into 4 groups. So the first group is the measures to support the health system, including the measures to support the prevention, the control, and the treatment of these diseases. The second category is the measures to ensure the material supply, the medical materials supply. Okay. The third category is the measures to encourage public donations. And the fourth category is the measures to help the resumption of the production. That's just to help to reopen the economy. Okay. So these measures relate to different kinds of taxes, including enterprise income tax, individual income tax, the VAT or tariff, or real estate tax, or some other kinds of taxes. Okay, so some of them are not that notable for most industries. For example, the tariff matters more for imports and exports. Okay, the real estate tax and the land use tax are the same story. Okay, that means they matters a lot to some industries, but just nothing to some other industries. Okay. So actually, just as I mentioned, all these measures can be found in the OECD database. So I will not go into too much details. I just explain a little bit here. So before I start, I'd like to make one point, because the tax is most complicated. Every chapter has a subchapter, every rule has exceptions. So that's the same story for Chinese tax system. So even China as a centralized country, its tax policy and the tax law rules are largely at national level, but it's still complicated. But here I just simplify the issue by following the main bone of the rules. Okay, so I will not go mention some exceptions or some subchapters. Okay, so just now I mentioned that all these measures can be divided into 4 categories. Let's come to the first category. That's to support the tax measures to support the health system. That's the measures to support the prevent, control, and the treatment of the diseases. So these measures include, there are some subsidies when the medical workers or related staff, when they get subsidies or bonus. So these kind of subsidies and the bonus will be exempt from VAT, from the individual income tax. Then also for the employees in all the companies, because now the China has reopened the business, so the workers has come to their position, and then some employers will provide some medical staff, the personal protective staff for the employees. Okay. And so this kind of the PPE, the personal protective equipment, are exempt from individual income tax. Okay, so that's the first category. The second category measures is just the measures to ensure the materials supplies, the medical material supplies. So, for example, the VAT, in the area of VAT, for the public transportation services, the lifestyle services, and the pickup and the delivery services, all these kind of services, because they are daily necessary for the everyday life of the people, especially during this pandemic. So the income from this kind of business activities are exempt from VAT according to the rule. Okay. Then also the tax rules will allow the one-off deduction in the calculation of the enterprise income tax for those equipment to enlarge the production capacity, because some medical items are in short need. So the government wants to encourage the company to enlarge the production. So this kind of equipment will get a one-off deduction in the for the purpose of income tax. Okay. So that's the second measures. The third category of measures is measures to encourage public donations. So these kind of measures will be used to mobilize the support, the social support for this for the pandemic control, for the virus control. Okay. According to the current individual income tax and corporate income tax, there is a cap for donation deduction in China. For individuals, only 30% of the taxable income are deductible for the purpose of income tax. But for corporations, the cap is 12% of the total profit. So that's the current rule. But to counter this virus, during this pandemic, there is a new rule that, according to the new measures, for both individuals and the corporations, the cashes and the goods donations, that means the donations in cash or in kind for the purposes of epidemic prevention and the relevant medical treatment, can be fully deducted for income tax purposes. So that's the change, a big change. Okay. Also, for the donation, the deduction, donation of goods to charitable organizations or municipal and upper level government bodies and hospitals are exempt from VAT and consumption tax and some other kind of taxes or fees. So not just for income tax purpose, but also for other tax purpose. Okay. So the last category is the measures to help the resumption of production. Just like I mentioned, that because now China has reopened its market, reopened its economy. So the tax measures have moved to a further step to help the companies to resume their production. Okay. So here, the tax measures mainly to relieve the enterprise burden. So because in China now, the social security contributions is very important. It's a major part of the burden. Okay, so here the new measures will work here to ease the enterprise burden. Okay, so reducing their labor cost and boost their confidence in resume work and production. So this kind of measures include the following. For example, for those seriously affected business in certain sectors, for example, the transportation, the catering, accommodation, or tourism. So the loss carry forward period has extended from 5 years to 8 years. But this only applies to the losses incurred in this year, in the year of 2020. 2020, okay. So this is the fourth category, and just like I mentioned, altogether there are quite a lot. Altogether there are more than 10 guidelines have been released by SAT together with the Ministry of Finance. I just summarize all these measures into 4 categories, and so that's the summary of the Chinese situation here. Okay, Luca.
Thank you very much for being here with us and for the clear explanation of the Chinese legislation. Really interesting in the categories and the explanation of those. And normally during our talk, we like also to open up a little bit the view. So not being focused just on the domestic side, but also discussing about the international context. So we would be very like to have also your idea, your input on the consequences, on the implication on the international context of the COVID-19 crisis.
Thank you, Pietro. Thank you for your question. Okay, so this is very interesting when we come to the international aspect of the issue. So actually, the OECD has released a guideline. I think that's in the early April. A guideline to just focus on the international tax matters. So according to the OECD guideline, there are 4 issues that should be addressed here. That's the first issue is the concerns about related to the creation of PEs, and the second is related to the residence status of a company. The third is the cross-border workers, and the last one is the change to the residence status of individuals. So very interestingly, I just run through these guidelines. Okay, so according to this guideline, I can say that the overall conclusion is that due to for the pandemic, it's exceptional and temporary in nature. So that is it's not a normal case. It's exceptional and or accidental. I can say that. So because it's exceptional and temporary, so this crisis should not alter the existing rule too much. So that's the overall conclusion from this guideline. Now that it's just exceptional and temporary, or just as I said, it's an accidental event, how it gets such extensive attention from various perspectives. Now, this pandemic is being discussed extensively from different perspectives, economically, scientifically, even politically. Okay, so are we just overreacting? Actually, I don't think that we are overreacting. Okay, and so just like I mentioned, that the Chinese tax measures. Also, you can find most other countries are doing the same thing. So that all these measures are pretty much the same. Okay, it's true that the tax measures may bring immediate effect to counter this pandemic, to revitalize the economy. So more than that, it does bring some more profound or far-reaching effect to the international tax. Okay, so this kind of actually In my mind, there are at least two aspects. I mean, the profound effect that will happen, that take place in the area of international tax, at least two aspects. The first one is industrial analysis will get more relevance, especially digitalized economy. As we all know, international tax are undergoing reform. So now it's a very big reform. I will not say a digital economy is the whole story of the reform project, but digital economy does constitute the most important part of it. At the very beginning, digital economy got attention because it facilitates BEPS, make BEPS a more serious problem. Okay? Because taxpayers can easily avoid tax through digitalization. So that has brought us a very big challenge. OECD has been working on this very intensively, and some progress has been made so far. I will not move to that topic here because everyone are familiar with that, and that's the big topic. Okay? But today, because of this pandemic, digital economy has been brought to the spotlight once again. Okay. Why? Because, as everyone knows, only the digital economy are making profits, while others are losing money. So there will be a possible consequences. The other industries are losing money. The digital economy are making profits or making even more profits than before. So the possible consequences may be the countries may want to tax them more to make up for the losses incurred in other industries. Because every country wants revenue. Now that only this industry are making money, so this industry will be the primary source of revenue. So this is quite understandable. Okay? So also this may be done in different forms. For example, the DST, the digital service tax, or other tax, mainly just mainly targeted at digitalized activities. Okay. So as everyone knows, digital is the DST is quite controversial, but the current situation, the pandemic, probably will bring some more justice to it. Okay. So that's the first point. The second, I think, under the pandemic, the business may change their supply chain. Actually, the change of supply chain has been happening quite a few years ago. For example, with the increasing labor cost in China, some factories have moved outside of China to some other countries with lower labor cost. So this has been happening for quite a long time, but this pandemic, even this pandemic is not the source of this move, but it may accelerate this process. Okay. So what's the relevance to international tax? So I think that's quite of relevance. For example, it may bring change to transfer pricing rules, or countries concerned may reevaluate their position in international negotiations, especially the current negotiation undergone with the OECD digital taxation project. Okay. So in this way, I think the current situation will make the international negotiation more difficult. Okay. So all these are possible. All these are possible, or even not just possible. Some of them may be real. Anyway, but at this moment, I cannot predict what will be the exact outcome. Okay, and maybe it's too early to predict the exact the outcome. Okay, because it will depend on too many things. Anyway, it deserves our attention, and we may just wait and see what will be the ultimate change to the international tax. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Zhang. We appreciate your very clear picture on the domestic tax measures enacted by China. Especially we understand that the measure about the carry forward, the expanding of the time limit for the carry forward of losses. And thank you very much. We do agree also with the issue that the web taxation represents the real new challenge, because there is many space for tax avoiding, of course. So thank you very much again for your discussion, and we hope to have the chance to see you again soon.
Just one thing, because I really appreciated the fact that I didn't think about this in these days, and you are right that the COVID-19 shall affect really lightly the negotiation position of the countries. That's something, because normally we speak about taxes, but when you speak about taxes at the level at an international level, you need to speak also about the behavior of the countries. That's a really good things to take into consideration in our thoughts. I hope to see in person really soon. So it means that we have the possibility to move and to have international congress physically all together.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.